here are my thoughts about show notes. First and foremost, I want to tell you that show notes really are no more than a blog post that talks about your podcast episode. I just want you to think about it in that way. There are a couple elements that should make up that blog post that actually makes it, in my mind, what I would officially call show notes. All right, and here are what I consider to be the required elements of show notes. Although, really, there is no real requirement for show notes, but these are my requirements. All right, so first and foremost, I believe that the blog post, aka show notes for a podcast episode, first and foremost, number one, it must include an audio player so that somebody who is visiting your website, they should be able to click a button to play the podcast episode right there directly from your website. Number two, I believe that your blog post should potentially have an image. That image can be something where it's got just a fancy background with a text of the title of the episode on it, or it could be any kind of image that just relates to the topic. So for example, if I was doing a podcast episode on the best mic technique for your audio podcast, I would probably put a picture of me in front of a microphone like this. You know what you're seeing right now? I would just do a photo like this, and that would be what I would use as the image for that. Now, maybe you don't want to take your own photography. One thing I want to encourage you, definitely never lift images off of Google and just searching stuff on the web and then use that in your show notes. Trust me, you can run into some real financial, legal problems if you do that. If you don't want to use your own images or create your own images, you can buy royalty-free stock photos. I think I use photodune.net, but there are a lot of royalty-free photo images out there, or websites out there, and I would encourage you to look for an image that you can put in there that's relatable to the topic, kind of eye-catching. All right, then below the image, I believe should be a summary of what your show contains. Personally, I do not think that you should put so much content in it that people do not need to listen to the episode. In fact, the purpose of the show notes in the summary section is not to relate all of the information that's in the episode, but instead, I kind of think of it as a sales page of why they should click that play button, and so that they can hear my voice. Yeah, I don't want to just give them a transcript and let them read it. Some people would prefer that. I want them to hear my voice so that they can, instead of reading my words on a page, they hear the passion that I have for the topic that I'm talking about. They can actually hear my voice and make that closer, personal, more intimate connection with me as a human being. And so I want that the summary of what the episode covers to be more of a, this is what I talk about in this episode. And I hope that now that you've read one or two paragraphs about what this is, I hope that you'll click play right now, that it just like, wow, I cannot imagine not listening to what he has to say about this. So that's what I want. I want my show notes to be a summary, but more than a summary, I want it to be a massive piece of sales material that says, click this episode, listen to it right now. It will change your life forever. By the way, this section of the show notes, maybe you have different topics covered in the episode. I often will do that. I'll cover more than one topic in my shows. And if I do that, I'll put a title like in bold print, and then a small couple sentence summary of that topic, and then the bold title for the next topic, and then a summary of that. Here's another option. This is something that I do sometimes, not all of the time, but sometimes when I'm finished editing the podcast, I will actually make a note of when each of those topics start. And so I'll even put a little note in there. This topic starts at 17 minutes and 32 seconds into the episode. You won't see that in all of my show notes. Again, sometimes I get lazy. I don't always do my best practices, but a little option for you there as well. Below that, I would put a little title that says links and resources mentioned in this episode. And this is just a bullet point list of any links that I mentioned, any products that I talked about, links to where people can buy those, oftentimes affiliate links if necessary or if available. And then below that, I would probably put any other announcements that you may want to put in. to the show notes, either something week to week that you're putting in every week or any other miscellaneous announcement that maybe you didn't include in the episode, but now you want to put it in the show notes. And then I would also put links in the bottom of the show notes of where you can subscribe to the podcast. Really, the only place that I would tell them, please subscribe to the podcast, and I would put down a link to where they can subscribe in iTunes, and I would give them the link to the RSS feed. One other thing that I would put in every show notes, I would put an opt-in email form where people can subscribe to your mailing list. That's the show notes. In my opinion, those are the best show notes you could possibly have. One other question about show notes that always comes up is, should you provide a transcript? I've never done it. Personally, I've never offered transcripts. Over 3,600 podcast episodes, not one episode has ever been transcribed and provided as a transcript on the site. If you want to provide transcripts, I think on average these days, it's about $1 per minute. There's a lot of technology coming out that may have cheaper solutions, but if you want a human being to transcribe, on average, expect to spend about $1 per minute. I do not recommend putting the entire transcript as a blog post of your show, giving them every word-for-word, play-by-play breakdown. But instead, if you're going to offer a transcript, I would actually include that as a PDF download linked from your show notes post. So it's like, if you'd like a transcript, word-for-word transcript of this episode, click the PDF document below and to download it. So that's what I would recommend. That's my thoughts on show notes.